should you play this game? Yes. Yes, you should. I'm going to focus on the gameplay in this video because when it comes down to whether you should play a game or not, it's about the fun. Is the game fun? I think this game is a lot of fun. It's a tight experience, and before we really get into that experience, I have to deal with the elephant in the room first, the movement. This is going to be one of the most sensitive and contentious topics for players with a Quake and Diabotical background. Quake, which is the game that really inspired Diabotical, is a game that's got a huge skill ceiling in movement, and that has been one of the key identifying aspects of what makes Quake gameplay. So I really wanted to give somewhat of a sense of what it can look like in Quake. Now this is the CPM moveset. There's two major movesets in terms of movement in Quake. You got CPM, where you got that 3 bunny hopping control that's very similar to 1.6 and Half-Life if you've played those games, because those games use the original id Tech engine, which is what Quake 1 was built off of, and that is where, of course, we really got to know this type of movement. In Quake, we also have VQ3, which is a little bit more restricted, but still the skill ceiling is extraordinarily high, and this is something you can leverage in your competitive matches for advantages. You can train your movement, you can get faster than other people, you can do hard trick jumps more consistently than other people. These things will be missing from Diabotical. Now I wanted to raise this because I don't think it's a negative, because Diabotical Rogue is trying to be Diabotical Rogue. We still have all of this stuff, but I did want to give you guys, if you haven't ever seen anything like this before, a sense, just a taste of what it's like. I'll definitely do a video that goes into a bit more depth about just how much I love the movement in these games, because movement is so important in every Quake game, and if you remove the skill expression in movement, well, you may as well be playing Halo. So it's understandable then that this could be a big turnoff for many Quake players. So, with that said, I was happily surprised that when approached with an open mind, the game still felt really fun with the movement options that were on offer, and it still felt fast and Quakey. So let's take a look at the classes and what we're dealing with. Every suit has access to by default, so this will never get taken away, you'll always have this. Now Slide has been tweaked by the devs quite a bit, as you can see, 10 patches deep so far. We've even got time since last patch, 9 hours and 30 minutes, so the guys in the good studio are definitely working pretty hard on this one. But how do you use the slide? It's pretty simple. You just jump and then hold crouch in the air, and as you land, you'll get a slide. And so this is something that combines really well if you've got a movement ability, like for example, I am currently using Chunk. If I use the leap ability and I slide, yeah, I can see I get quite a good speed boost, and I am able to slide pretty darn far. So you can see it will combine quite well with the leap, with the hook, with the double jump, you know, any of these, the dash ability, like all of these extra movement abilities that the suits get will also combine quite nicely with the slide. Now, unlike the Quake Force crouch slide, which is when the crouch slide movement mechanic was first introduced into a Quake series, you are not able to control the direction of the slide once you have started to slide. So I can't kind of, you know, jump out of this to the left, or I can't kind of air control my way kind of to the left or to the right. I am just locked into the direction that I'm sliding. So that's something to bear in mind, so you don't get quite as much out of it as you would with the Quake 4 slide, but that's okay. Another thing to bear in mind is that you don't really gain any acceleration from trying to strafe jump, but it's something that's very hard as a habit to like break, just continually jumping, because you don't really get much benefit from doing it. You move just as fast really from just running forwards. So what you really probably want to be doing most of the time is, if you're trying to go for speed, you want to be jump and then slide. You can see that's a lot quicker than when I was just trying to just run forwards, and the running forwards was quicker than just trying to jump. You can see kind of if I'm trying to jump, it's going to take quite a while to get all the way over here, but if I slide instead, just one slide and I'm already almost there. So the slide is definitely something to definitely pay attention to and to try to master in your journey in Diabotical Rogue. These clips should give you a sense of the speed and pace of the action. Even the little Eggbot is able to be fairly maneuverable despite being the support class. The Eggbot gets both a dash and a double jump to keep up with his teammates. One extra ability that's especially nice is the teleport ability that lets you immediately appear next to your teammate that you directed the ability at. So this is great for helping teammates or escaping your current situation. Our little Eggbot friend is also the source of healing for the team and gets to pick between a healing aura or healing orb to help teammates recover. Overall, a very important supportive class. On the other hand, we do have the Chunk suit. And the Chunk's leap ability is a lot of fun, and you can make some really cool jumps. The addition of the shield upgrade whilst jumping is also pretty cool as a way to change strategy as you are more upgraded. This will allow you to be more effective in breaking positions and closing the distance as a team. Also, if you have a rocket launcher, you will definitely be looking for some ways to close the distance in some situations, and Leap is perfect for that to otherwise mitigate the slower movement of the chunky boy. The Scout is clearly #blessed because you can't beat a grappling hook, and that is exactly what he gets. This also has some cool upgrades to enhance the ability, including cooldown reductions, a swinging hook, and more. For those of you familiar with Widowmaker from Overwatch, you'll be able to also do some similar trick shots with the grapple and heavy sniper. Equally, having abilities like the smoke bomb can create some really fun escapability for this class. Other than the heavy sniper, the Scout also gets a nasty shotgun, as well as the Ironclad, which is a Deagle or Sheriff type of weapon. There's a lot of burst damage on the Scout, and I really appreciate that the Scout also has an ability that provides some healing. This is especially useful for those solo missions where you are split up from the team and need to recover shields or health. Classes are fun. In general, the class systems are more simplistic but tend to offer passive direction for players, which makes the game a little bit more casual friendly. If you play a character that has healing as a unique ability, it's intuitive, or at least I hope it is, that you are in a more supportive role and you need to help your teammates who are tanking damage, pursuing kills, fighting for space. If you play the big beefy dude who is appropriately named Chunk, then there should be a sense that you are supposed to get into the action and fight as much as you like. If you are playing the Agile Scout class with the most movement options, you are good at pursuit, burst damage, and the get in, quickly get out type of gameplay. So already, just by having some classes, there is some passive direction in how players should be playing, which is helpful for newcomers to team modes. The movement change also makes the game a little bit more team-oriented and tactical. If you're caught without a movement option or defensive option available, you may be toast. You can't simply use the base movement to escape, it's just too slow. This means you have to think carefully about how and when you are using your movement options. The game mode is fun. Like, the Wipeout Gamemode in Diabotical is currently the only game mode available, but more will be on offer in future. It's also worth mentioning that this has been a popular game mode for decades. Wipeout is really just a more modernized version of what we used to call in Quake 3 Clan Arena. And Wipeout is a fast-paced, round-based, multiplayer mode where 2 teams of 4 players face off against each other. In this mode, players start each round with 2 weapons. The primary objective is to eliminate the entire opposing team to win the round. As players get eliminated, their respawn time increases, making it progressively harder to come back into the game and emphasizing strategic gameplay and team coordination. Interestingly, speaking of game modes, Get Right and friberg are actually working with the devs to actually make their own game mode, and I'm very curious to see what happens with that. Are we going to get some kind of bomb defusal mode? I mean, that's the only thing that can jump into my mind when we're talking about 2 legendary Counter-Strike players. So we'll have to just wait and see what they're cooking up over there. Roguelikes are fun. The main difference compared with Diabotical and Diabotical Rogue is in the name. Diabotical Rogue has roguelike elements, and that introduction of roguelike elements is really fun. Players getting to choose from 3 different suits, each with unique abilities. You have randomized weapons as well from a pool of 6 weapons currently for each suit. This really does create a lot of replayability, and it's a lot of fun to have a certain loadout and have certain upgrades, and then to design your gameplay around that to try to figure out how can I leverage the strengths of this current build that I'm running. And adding in these cards that appear after each death and round to offer you upgrades to your abilities and weapons is really fun, and I haven't seen this take on this type of game mode in the past. Now, this game is actually a great game to be your side-bae potentially, because if you want to play a round of Wipeout, you can be in and out in 10 minutes. So it doesn't take a lot of time, and unlike many other games, FPS games are great because of the amount of aiming and fighting that you do. It can often be significantly more than other games. Just imagine Apex Legends, where you're running around just trying to get guns for 10 minutes, and maybe you have like 1 engagement during that time, if that. Or imagine in a attack shooter like Counter-Strike or Valorant, where you're spending a lot of time either just sitting on angles where the action is not, whether you're sitting on buy time or you're dead. You're spending a lot of time not actually playing the game there. But in a game like Diabotical Rogue, you are constantly in the action. So it's a really nice way to train your aim. It's a really nice way to just get some fast-paced action where the decision making isn't quite as complex and you're not quite as punished for making mistakes because, although, of course you don't want to die, you are going to be punished less than in a attack shooter or in a battle royale, where if you die, the implications are pretty huge on your economy, on the weapons, on just so many different things. But actually, as you die in Wipeout, you actually are getting stronger, generally speaking. So it's definitely a good game mode for training your aim. It's a good game mode for just having fun. Now, we have to talk about the weapons. There are some familiar weapons like the shaft, rocket launcher, plasma gun, crossbow, and so on, but generally speaking, there are a lot of new weapons here. I'm sure that they will go through lots of balance iterations as time goes on, but at the moment, nothing feels particularly broken to me. With that said, I haven't yet played the high skill pickups, where I'm sure I'll start to get a better sense for the balance, and shout out to Death Row who invited me to the pickup channel recently. And I haven't had time to thoroughly test everything, as I currently only have 10 hours in the game, but I will share what I've learned so far. The shaft feels extremely comfortable to me. Tracking in this game feels really easy, and I'm routinely hitting 55% or more shaft in any given fight. And, I would say that a professional level aim with shaft in Diabotical or in previous Quake games, you're probably talking something between 35 to 45% against really good players. And the difference here is because we don't have as much movement options just by default, it's actually a lot easier to hit. We've got slightly slower movement speed, larger enemy models. All of these things contribute in making it easier to hit with the shaft. And my favorite upgrade is the increased range, as it makes it hard for anyone to escape you, and you can also get continuous damage on opponents no matter what they're doing in many cases, because they can't move outside of your range as easily. So you're able to also peek in then from further distances to get in some good damage. The rockets feel good as well. They just work. This weapon is nice for guarding corridors, doing burst damage, fighting for space. My favorite upgrade card has to be the zero self damage. This may actually be kind of broken because the movement options are insane when you can rocket jump for free. With some upgraded cooldowns combined with leap, you suddenly become extraordinarily mobile. The other weapons Chunk gets are a plasma gun and a burst fire machine gun called the Echo HMG. The plasma gun, which it's not called that, but I don't think I'll ever be able to not call it the plasma gun. It's pretty good, but just not as versatile as the other weapons. It's great for long-range chip damage and close ranges when in a pinch, as the DPS is really high, but the ability is harder to hit compared with other weapon choices unless you're in a specific scenario where the opponent movement is linear. The Echo HMG is like the FAMAS on burst in CS or a burst rifle from Apex Legends. It's pretty strong, but the aiming style is a little bit different, so it may feel awkward for some. If you're an aim trainer grinder though, pretend it's a switching task, as it requires a flick followed by a small amount of tracking for the duration of each burst. Something you'll notice is that there are headshots in this game with some weapons. Most weapons, in fact, will benefit from hitting the head hitbox, especially the heavy sniper that the scout gets, as it has the highest single shot damage of any gun. The heavy sniper is really good, but I think it can be mitigated by good positioning and team play. The burst damage of the scout is really scary. If we ignore the heavy sniper, he also gets the shotgun, which is brutal up close, as well as the ironclad, which is similar to your sheriff or deagle. Other notable mentions go out to the Eggbot, who currently shares the SB-34 with the Scout, which is a machine gun of sorts. This weapon actually does a lot of damage, especially with the good upgrades. The Eggbot can also make use of the headshot multiplier with the crossbow, which does a huge amount of damage if you can hit that shot. Okay, so something we haven't talked about is the power-ups, which spawn periodically throughout the arena. This is always a great tool to force a team who may have better positioning to have to make the choice. Do we abandon this position and contest the power-up which our opponents are going for? Usually the answer will be yes if the power-up is especially strong. Currently in Wipeout, there are a lot of weaker power-ups also available that aren't worth going out of your way for. So depending on how poor the position is of where the power-up spawned, you may be incentivized or disincentivized from going to grab it if you're in control. Some increase the currency rewards, some increase the card renewals, and some give overshield. One reason I like this is because the team that is behind is most likely going to get some of these weaker power-ups, because the team that's more in control will likely prefer not to give up key positioning. This acts as a cool comeback mechanic as it mitigates some of the disadvantage for the team that's behind. So some final thoughts on how I'm feeling about Diabotical. Overall, what we're looking at is really simple, and I actually think that that's great. One of Diabotical's criticisms was the game lacking identity. I feel like even though we've made some concessions, losing some game modes and movement options, it feels like the experience is more connected compared with Diabotical previously. When we had a bunch of different game modes, it was hard to understand what exactly the core game was for newer players, especially. You'll notice that AAA games like Valorant, CS, Apex Legends, and more all focus on a core game loop that features one main game mode. The reason these companies do that is to ensure they don't split their player pool in a way that creates a vastly different game loop for everyone. It also enables them to more easily tie in game lore, cosmetics, and actively develop new content for what people are all invested in. This model definitely works, and I think Valorant is the best example of this done well. However, Diabotical is not a AAA studio. Don't let the quality of the engine fool you. I know, it's bloody good. They've made a choice here not to go free to play, which I think is the best choice, at least initially. Free to play models only work if you can make money through microtransactions, which is actually quite a revenue and time intensive strategy. It's not enough just to have things that people can buy in game. You also have to make them care, and this requires a lot of thought and effort and work to achieve. You also need to continuously develop content for people to purchase and engage with. This is very costly in terms of developer time. So in my opinion, going free to play is ultimately a luxury that Diabotical Rogue just can't afford, being a small studio. And I think it will mean we'll get a better game out of the good studio, as they won't need to focus so heavily on everything that goes into that. With all of that said, should you play this game? For $15.99, I think it's worth it, even though it's an early access. If you enjoy fast-paced arena FPS gameplay with classes, it's a lot of fun and the experience is extremely smooth thanks to the incredible engine. It's also not time-consuming like most other esports games. You can easily finish a match within 10 minutes, and even though there isn't much content in the game just yet, as it's early access, the gameplay that is available is fast and exciting. And finally, we haven't talked really about menus and graphics and all these various things, but I have to give a shout out to Diabotical Rogue, because, taking on from Diabotical, they have the best crosshair editor in the world. It's just so incredibly good. It's so easy to use. You can do so much with it. And it has been, for me, quite shocking how many AAA studios have had a very poor crosshair editor in their games, even if they are primarily an esports game. And so seeing this from the good studio, seeing that they are continuing to have an epic crosshair editor is just fantastic. So I hope this video has helped you guys to work out whether or not this is a buy for you. I think the game's a lot of fun, and I know that there's going to be a lot of cool stuff down the line in the development, so keep your eyes peeled if nothing else. And if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, check out my Patreon, and I'll see you for the next one. Cheers.